Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today, we're going to talk about an artifact that is being threatened with destruction because of the symbols on it. I know about this because of an article that a number of you guys have sent me because you wanted my input on it. There's a link in the description below to a couple of articles talking about this object. It is a piece of ornamentation from the stern of the pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee, which features very prominent Nazi iconography, including the eagle and the swastika. First off, how I'm dressed today. I am wearing my Cruiser Salem hoodie. Cruiser Salem played Admiral Graf Spee in the movie The Battle of the River Plate, or the Cruise of the Graf Spee. I forget what it's called. It was called different things depending on where it was released. But very interesting movie if you want to see an American post-war cruiser. Obviously, Graf Spee wasn't around to portray herself, and this was an age before you were making big CGI effects that look awful, like that terrible Midway movie that came out recently. The Battleship New Jersey crew has visited Salem a couple of times, and there's some videos. There's some links to their stuff in the description below, and peruse our channel. We've done a number of videos on the Cruiser Salem. And I'm mentioning Salem because she portrayed Graf Spee in that movie. She would be the perfect site to display this artifact. However, a Argentinian millionaire, I'm not quite sure what his value is, has threatened to buy the object when it goes up for bid and destroy it. He wants to do this because it can be used to glorify Nazism. He's worried that another millionaire or private individual would buy it and hang it in their house and glorify Nazis with it. And he doesn't want that to happen. It disturbs me to no end that his thought isn't to acquire this object and then give it to a cultural institution, a museum. So clearly this individual either hasn't thought of it because he doesn't visit museums often, or has thought of it and doesn't think that museums would do this well. And I think that's the biggest shame of this whole thing. I don't believe that an artifact like this should be destroyed. I should also state, I don't think it should have ever been raised from the wreck. I don't like it when people go down and strip parts off of wrecks. This particular one isn't a war grave, but it's very common, even for war graves like HMS Hood, for people to go down and recover the ship's bell. Or for graves like RMS Titanic, for them to go down and leave a bunch of plaques all over the place and basically litter what was otherwise a pristinely preserved vessel. And so Graf Spee's preservation underwater, which could have continued almost indefinitely, has been disturbed because people went down and stripped objects off of it, including this stern ornament with the Nazi iconography. And now they are selling it at auction to pay for that, which is going to lead something that was otherwise going to be preserved indefinitely to face the possibility of either destruction or glorifying the horrible deeds of an entire nation. So, like Indiana Jones, I believe in punching Nazis and putting artifacts in museums. So why don't I bid for it, put it on display here, and interpret it in the proper context? Battleship New Jersey could not afford to ship the 350 kilogram object from Argentina to the museum, much less buy it. Its value is estimated at $26 million US. On a good year, Battleship New Jersey's income is about $5 million. And most of that goes towards the preservation of the ship, the largest percentage of that, with more going towards staff salaries and other stuff going to making new signage and whatnot, which invariably we would have to do if we acquired this artifact. So if we just left the ship sitting and fired everyone and somehow still got guests through, it would still take 5 years to raise the money to match a $26 million bid. So, okay, maybe Battleship New Jersey isn't the best museum ship in the world. There are two museum warships out of over 100 in this country, only two that have an annual operating budget bigger than $26 million. And the highest budget of a museum ship, and this is from 2019 pre-pandemic, obviously none of us have gotten there during the pandemic, was only $32 million in a year. The National World War II Museum only makes about $100 million only makes about $100 million a year. So if they stopped doing everything else and spent 1/4 of their annual income to acquire this single object, they could. And the simple truth is, museum ships don't operate the way you might think of a traditional museum, like a large art museum operating. Large art museums go out and acquire objects. They acquire artifacts, they acquire pieces of artwork, and they spend significant amount of money to do that, and their curatorial department has a budget to do that. And museum ships don't generally do that. We do operate as museums. We do display artifacts. Those artifacts tend to be the personal effects of sailors who served on the ships, or items from the ship. We have a 5-inch shell on display in an exhibit, so you can see what that looks like. We have the contents of a sailor's sea bag on display on an exhibit, so you can see what this person saved from their time aboard. It includes souvenirs. It includes the ship's cruise book, like a yearbook. It includes publications that were printed on board, his uniforms, all of those things that can tell you what life was like on board and provide context for the truly important artifact that the museum displays, the ship itself. Historic ship museums are much more like historic house museums in that the ship and its furnishings are the important thing that we're displaying, not the acquired objects. And the objects we have on display are largely donated by the crew. They're not things that we go out and pay money for. For example, today we're filming in the ship's captain's cabin, particularly the in-port cabin, one of the more luxuriously appointed spaces on board. And we're filming here specifically because of the ship's silver, which is on display here. And that is the closest thing to this Nazi iconography we have on the entire ship. Battleship New Jersey is a war-built ship. She's not pre-war construction like Graf Spee was. And so she doesn't have many frills like a giant 700-pound cast bronze national symbol on her. The closest thing we have is the ship's silver, which is covered in New Jersey-related iconography, but obviously not to the same scale as that. Don't go out and acquire objects, but we do think this should be saved. Would I put this on display if you were a millionaire and you've decided to buy it and give it to the museum? I wouldn't immediately put it on display. If you gave it to me today, I wouldn't be able to display it right away. It would go into the collection. It might need conservation work. It's been underwater for a while. And that might be more expensive than what the museum can afford, in which case I wouldn't accept the donation. But okay, assuming that you give me something that is ready for display, I wouldn't put it out on display day one because I don't have an exhibit for it yet that can provide the proper context. So we take some time, we come up with an exhibit, and we put it on display so we can provide the proper context. What is that context? Well, we should not be glorifying Nazism. That goes without saying. On this channel, we don't show images of the swastika in general. For one, it's upsetting to some people, but more importantly, it's unnecessary glorification of Nazism to keep showing this symbol. If I'm sitting here talking about a German battleship, we can show pictures of the battleship and talk about it without showing swastikas painted all over it and really hammering home that it belonged to those evil people. However, in this video, we are showing it. We can't show this artifact without the bronze swastika that's cast on it. And if we put it on display, we would have to have context of what that swastika means to different people. To a Jewish person, or a gypsy, or a gay person, or a Slav, any of these people that the Nazis slaughtered, it is a clear symbol of oppression to people like that, who may have lost family members, relatives, people they cared about, but to a whole other group of people who somehow still exist in the 21st century. And if any of you Nazis are watching this channel, go ahead and unsubscribe right now. But this group of people who still exist glorify this iconography. So that is part of what has to be told with this story. That this means different things to different people, and but it still has to be displayed without being covered up or obliterated. That's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comment section down below. So, those are just some of my thoughts and personal opinions. I cannot stress the word opinion enough. Those are my personal opinions. They're not the opinions of the museum, anything else like that. They are my opinions, and they may largely differ from yours. There are a lot of different ways that you could interpret an artifact like that. That's been part of what this video is about. And I'd really like to hear your opinions of what you think an appropriate way to interpret this object would be, assuming a millionaire bought it and gave it to a museum. An artifact like this from the pocket battleship Graf Spee, a commerce raider that operated in the South Atlantic and Indian Ocean, could be used to tell the story of how World War II was global. It could be used to tell the story of the war in Europe. It could be used to tell the story of the swastika. It could even be used to tell the story of how we, 80 years removed, think about that sort of iconography, because that's largely what this video was about. I would love to hear your opinions on what you would like to see out of an exhibit featuring this artifact in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals. We do not receive $26 million in operating support. You can support Battleship New Jersey through the donate button in the description below, or by liking, sharing, and subscribing so that more people find out about our channel and our museum. Thanks for watching.